Greetings to everyone. This is a continuation of the story, where Naruto gets a second chance, but in the sum of a girl. If you want the continuation, write about it in the comments, chapter 14-20. Before the start of the video, subscribe to the channel and like it, it's very important for me. Thank you, enjoy watching. Chapter 14. Return. Because of Sasuke's and my condition, we returned home not after a month, but after 3. Naturally, this delayed all the deadlines for our engagement, and I was even scared to think how To-san and Fugaku-san got out of it in front of the others. However, I am sure that nothing terrible happened, because, as far as I know, difficulties arose not only for us, but also for Itachi, although not so catastrophic. We can say that they were created artificially for him so that he would not relax, and also so that there would be no problems with explanations, because until now no one knows that the main character is not the eldest Uchiha heir. Although at the time of my return it didn't bother me much. Shursui, who embraced the seriousness of the moment, turned out to be a very demanding teacher. He devoted all the time that we were recovering and coming to our senses to our training, and he devoted every free minute to us and our improvement. He was especially atrocious when he realized that I had an almost inexhaustible supply of chakra and my training was limited not by it, but by my endurance. Well, I had a lot of it, as well as stubbornness. The result of such a frantic rhythm was that, albeit with a creak, I could get into someone else's subconscious, although I needed physical and eye contact. Not the best result, but in the previous world I was only able to achieve this when I was 16, so I considered it luck. In other directions, we made virtually no progress, except Sasuke said that his eyes will soon reach the ability to use mangekyo, but also, according to him, this could happen either tomorrow or in a couple of months. It doesn't sound very encouraging, but it's still better than his last verdict about a couple of years. Look, it will soon reach the rinnegan. However, our training was not the main shock. It turned out that Sakura, whom we did not see for the entire time we spent without leaving the room, roughly speaking, 10 days, and not too often after that, was assigned to the ANBU, who, albeit belatedly, came to the rescue. Or rather, they were treated not as ANBU, but as the ordinary jounin they portrayed. However, this could not deceive me and Sasuke. We perfectly saw the habits and gestures characteristic of ANBU, but for Sakura they were ordinary jounin who were forced to train her. I don't know what Shursui told them, but they took her tightly, and she had no time left for anything. She rose at dawn and arrived already dark. I felt a little sorry for her, but I understood perfectly well that this was the best option for her, because, according to Shursui, when they brought us in, she was hysterical. Knowing her character, the tough decision to keep her busy was the right one, because it would not only help her get distracted, but also allow her to become stronger. I hope this will help her become more confident and find herself, and also finally accept that Sasuke will never be hers. The sooner she can let go of her painful attachment, the better it will be for her, but time will tell. However, there was another good side to this. She would come to Chunin Shuriken more prepared, and we wouldn't have to be distracted by covering for her all the time. This is how our days passed before we returned, so who would know how happy we were when we saw the walls of our native village. Shursui a real beast. He even managed to wrap me up. I can't even think about training without shuddering. Therefore, with great joy, I said goodbye to the Uchihos and Sakura and, humming joyfully, went home. However, the joy of returning did not last long. As soon as I crossed the threshold of the house and announced to everyone about my return, Kachan came out to meet me. Second and I literally hear the seal breaking and the Kyubi-Kachan covered in chakra rushes at me. Neither To-san, who came down from the stairs to my voice, I remember that I was surprised by his presence. He usually returns later, nor Anai-san and Nisan, I was also surprised by their presence. They usually came barely, had time to react to this. No later than Tucson, looking out from the kitchen. But Kurama managed to react, releasing one tail behind my back and forming a cover that was not very dense, but protected me from the poisonous emanations of someone else's chakra. Now 2 Jinchuriki were rushing around the small courtyard of our house, and the worst thing was that, unlike me, Kyubi, who had captured the body and mind of Kachan, was not limited in strikes and the amount of chakra. I have to be careful not to cause harm. Lousy situation. No matter how much I would like to, I will have to turn for help to those whose minds are now sleeping inside me. It's a pity that Tu-san and Ne-san can't intervene. The local Kyubi took care of this by closing them with a barrier inside the house, and until they remove it, time will pass. Time that I don't have now. I reach out to the minds of the other Bijou. Now I need Shikaku. Yes, he won't be able to use all his power, but I need him to slow down Kachan's body for just a second. A second that will allow me to enter her subconscious. I hope his power over sand will help me with this. Yahoo! I finally woke up. Tanuki screams cheerfully in my subconscious, but when I look around and see what is happening, I instantly become more serious. What I should do? Slow it down for a couple of seconds, I respond, breathing heavily. Okay. He responds cheerfully and gives me all the chakra he collected during his short sleep. You know what to do, and I'll continue to sleep. Just in case call. Although it's a pity that I won't be able to warm up. I didn't answer Shikaku, but I was glad for his support. How bad it is that he is cut off from his real powers. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have to get rid of myself like that. However, even the crumbs that he can give me are quite enough for what I have planned. I catch the moment when Kachan's body is on the ground and put my hands on it. A short impulse, just like Gara once showed me, and Kachan's feet end up in the sand. A moment of confusion, but it was enough for me to grab her hand and look into her eyes, and now I'm already standing in her subconscious. Kachan is unconscious and crucified on the wall, exactly as Kyubi himself was crucified at one time, and the culprit of this grins gloatingly opposite. Kurama, I count on you, I say quietly to my friend. Did you tell your name to the pathetic little man? Kyubi roared. Shut up, little furball, Kurama snorted in response, and to me, Naruto, you know what to do. Yes, short answer, and I rushed towards Kachan. First you need to free her, and then you can swaddle Kyubi. As soon as I started moving, Kyubi wanted to intercept me, but did not succeed. Kurama literally demolished him with his body, and then an ugly squabble between the two foxes began. The only thing that upset me was that Kurama was deprived of most of his powers and would not last long at this pace. Although, he said that he could handle it, and I believe in him. Having reached Kachan, I throw all extraneous thoughts out of my head. Now I have to pull the stakes out of her hands and feet, and then destroy the chains. With great difficulty, I managed to implement only part of my plan. As soon as the last stake was taken out, her wounds healed before her eyes and she came to her senses. Naruto? Surprised, and in the eyes of disbelief and misunderstanding. But why be surprised? After all, in my subconscious I look like my real age, and not the one that is attributed to me in this world, so her shock is understandable. One thing makes me happy. It is impossible to lie in the subconscious without its owner noticing it, and therefore my answer will dispel all her suspicions. Yes, it's me, Kachan, I nod, at the same time trying to tighten the chains that bind her. Kachan looks at me searchingly, but then her gaze catches on something behind me. But why for something? Kurama and Kyubi are fighting there. I think I understand her interest. Move away, short order, and Kachan, who has already pulled herself together, literally breaks the chains that bound her body with her bare hands. Marvelous! But what am I talking about? She's the bloody habanero. Kurama, move aside! I scream, seeing that Kachan is about to use his favorite technique, chakra chains. Kyubi is confused for a second, but Kurama has enough of it to jump back and not get hit by the chains, although, judging by the narrowed eyes of Kachan, she was not happy with this arrangement. He's not the enemy, I say soothingly to Kachan and take her hand, simultaneously distracting her from what is about to happen. We won, and now a duel of wills will begin, which should end in the victory of my friend. There are no other options for us. I should distract Kachan from what is happening, and I should also figure out why everything happened this way. Kachan, why did the seal break? I asked her quietly. I thought we still had time before it was destroyed. Kachan averted her eyes, but then, having decided something, she looked decisively at me and answered, "This shouldn't have happened, although after seeing the second Kyubi, I'm starting to guess what's going on." Apparently, there was a resonance in my seal, which had been constantly patched lately, could not stand it. It's strange that this didn't happen sooner. But why now? I was surprised and said indignantly, I thought we had about a month left. At least, at the rate of destruction of the seal that was before we left on the mission, it should have been so. So you knew, right? Is that why you suggested it? Kachan smiled sadly. Yes, I didn't see the point in denying it. Everything is explained simply, Kachan sighed heavily. I'm having twins, so it turns out, and shaking himself anxiously, surely it will? Your body wasn't badly damaged, the only thing the impact of the Kyubi's chakra, but, in theory, it should not have seriously harmed the fetus. If my memory serves me right, there must be some kind of protective barrier. I frowned, trying to remember what Bachan once told me about pregnancy. If the Iranians are not late, then everything will be fine, because they didn't fight with you and there were no other influences. I finished. A couple of minutes later comes from behind me, and turning around, I saw only one fox. I left enough chakra for your mother, Naruto, a casual nod towards the large stone that used to serve as an altar for the Kyubi of this world, and now a small fire glows on it. And it's time for us to return. Fine, I nod and turn to Kachan. Sorry, Kachan, but the conversation will have to be rescheduled. Okay, but don't even think that you'll get off that easy. She smiles cheerfully back at me and Kurama takes us from her subconscious. As soon as I find myself in the real world, a monstrous pain hits my receptors and I hear wild screams. Doctor, quickly! I think it was Tusan's voice, but I'm not sure. Blessed darkness receives me. I don't know how long I stayed unconscious, but something tells me it was more than one day, and, as Sasuke later told me, I was there for almost a week. He reassured me about Kachan, telling me that everything was fine with her and the children and, unlike me, she was not seriously injured, so no problems were expected. I made everyone worried. However, excitement did not prevent them from making all inquiries about both my general condition and the condition of the 8 trigrams seal. One thing is good, they didn't try to improve it, but simply studied it. Phew! It's lucky that there are seal masters in Konoha, otherwise it's unknown how all this would have ended. However, I found out much later that someone decided to dig deeper into my seal. But for now I was just lying on my bed and waiting for me to be discharged. No, I could have escaped through the window, but Ka-chan was quite convincing when she asked me not to do that, so I decided not to risk it. True, from idleness I was overcome by dark thoughts. For example, why is Tusan acting as usual and not asking anything? Why is Enai-san silent? Why does Sasuke, when he visits me, look exhausted and is almost always accompanied by someone from his clan? Questions, questions, questions. And the most disgusting thing, that no one is going to answer them, and that's bad. I don't know what to think anymore. Although, if we add together what we told Shursui, Sasuke's exhausted and gloomy appearance, then, is Tasan really looking for someone to blame for the fact that Kurama turned out to be in me? That would be an option, because Sasuke hardly said much, and dragging him into a genjutsu is very problematic, as is penetrating the subconscious. The Uchihas have such cockroaches living in it that I never even dreamed of. However, I was not allowed to indulge in dark thoughts for long. I always had someone. There was a feeling that they were afraid to leave me alone. Although that may have been true. Well, after a week after I woke up, I was finally sent home, but, as it turned out, I was too early to rejoice. As soon as I got home, they began to prepare me for the engagement, despite all my objections. Why such a rush? As it turned out, my parents decided to play it safe. They simply didn't believe that I could control the power of the Kyuubi. Naive! But this is even better, although strange. However, I still have time to find out what the catch is, but for this I need to be alone with Sasuke. Chapter 15. After the Jinchuriki fight. It didn't take long before Naruto was separated from the Uchihas. Both brunettes walked to their quarter at a leisurely pace. They were silent, but this did not bother them. They were both immersed in their thoughts, and simply did not notice anything around them. However, this did not last long. They didn't even have time to reach their native quarter when a roar was heard and they were overcome by a feeling familiar to almost every Konoha resident. Yes, it was the pressing sensation of the Kyuubi's chakra. They didn't think much further and rushed towards the Yandame's house. They didn't have time. They arrived at the very end and could only watch the picture of how the cover of poisonous chakra was sliding off Uzumaki Kushina, leaving no wounds, but Naruto was seriously injured. It felt like her skin had been flayed alive. A terrible picture. Doctor, quickly! Yandame's cry brings them out of prostration, and only after that they realize that they were not the only ones who rushed here to check the anomaly that had arisen. What happened here? Shursui asked a question, following the stretcher with his wife and daughter of the Yandame with his eyes. I don't know, the Hokage answered in confusion, who at that moment looked not like the formidable ruler of Konohagakure, but like an ordinary husband and father who had just almost lost his family. It's just that when Naruto entered the house, something happened to Kushina's seal and the Kyuubi began to free itself. The first 3 tails appeared instantly, and she attacked our daughter, knocking her out of the house and activating barriers that prevented us from interfering. Is that possible? And how could little Naruto survive after this? Shikaku Nara approached in surprise, and only now did many notice that all the clan heads had gathered in the small courtyard of the Yandame's house. A rare event, but understandable, because it's not every day that the Kyuubi breaks out of its host. However, it was not only them, but also their spouses, which was also not very surprising, because Kushina was friends with everyone and they were worried about her. However, they did not linger and went after the doctors who had taken their friend and her daughter away. Don't know. I wouldn't be sure if I hadn't seen it myself. Namikaze sighed heavily and ran his hands through his hair in an attempt to calm down. No, it's quite real. The voice of Sasuke, forgotten by everyone, rang out, and he turned to the adults, who, seeing his eyes, hardly suppressed the desire to recoil. There's a lot you don't know about Naruto. I'm not surprised she was able to handle it, although it's a shame I was late. Sasuke, what's wrong with your eyes? Alarmed Mikoto Uchiha, who decided to first find out what happened, and only then visit her hospitalized friend, sensibly deciding that she would be interested in finding out the details. Don't worry, Ka-san. Looks like my second stage has finally awakened, the boy answered rather indifferently and, turning his gaze to the Hokage, continued his interrupted speech. Your mistake is that you consider the Kyubi to be a mindless lump of chakra that is filled with hatred. A slight grin, and the boy's eyes returned to their deep black color. However, now there is nothing to worry about. Kurama would rather cut off his own tails than allow anything to happen to his host. Kurama? Asked the Hokage confusedly. Sasuke, what do you know? Shursui exploded. I'm tired of your omissions. Nothing special, the boy shrugged. It's just that now Kyubi has found his true Jinchuriki, and he will fight for him to the death. What? An astonished exclamation. Nothing, Sasuke turned away from them. I just don't recommend trying to extract the Kyubi from Naruto, it will kill her. Moreover, she is the only one whom the Bijou respect and whom they obey. I do not advise testing their patience. An icy look, from which even the shinobi hardened in more than one battle felt uneasy, and he adds, and I simply don't recommend it. Sasuke! Shursui growled annoyed. I've said enough. Without turning around, the teenager snapped and disappeared in a whirlwind of shunshin. Shursui, what were you talking about? The Hokage, who had already pulled himself together, asked his question in a harsh voice. I don't know much myself, the guy said gloomily in response, but during the mission quite a lot of strange things happened that I did not include in the reports, Hokage-sama, Fugaku-sama. At first I just decided to observe, and then I realized that they were not dangerous, and these children were loyal to Konoha. For example? Both named frowned. Sasuke's high knowledge of the capabilities of the Sharingan, and he shouldn't even know about most of them. I generally had the feeling that he already knew most of what I taught him, and now he simply remembered how to do it. The guy began to list in response. The two were cold and collected during the fight. They killed without hesitation, although they did not enjoy it. For them it was just a job, no better or worse than others. A quick analysis of the situation and the ability to understand each other, not even from a half word, but from a half glance. Sometimes I had the thought that they simply read the thoughts and desires of their partner. Even Itachi and I cannot boast of something like that, although we grew up together. And Naruto, hesitating a little, but then resolutely raising his head and firmly meeting the Hokage's gaze, he continued. During the battle, she didn't just use the power of the Kyubi. It was she who killed two swordsmen from Kiri, or rather, a somewhat nervous grin, and Shursui continues. They were killed by Kyubi, to whom she completely gave power over her body. However, for some reason she calls him not Kyubi, but Kurama. Moreover, he not only killed, but also voluntarily returned back to the press, without trying to escape or harm the bearer and others. Quite the contrary, he healed Sasuke's serious wounds and helped Naruto recover faster. Impossible! Came out of the mouths of those present in shock. I wouldn't have believed it myself if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. She calmly released the three tails and lost control only because she decided that she could not save Sasuke. The guy nodded in agreement. But that's not all, the guy sighed heavily, knowing full well that hiding such information would come back to haunt him more than once. Sasuke was not at all surprised. He had known for a long time that she was a Jinchuriki, and it did not scare him. Even more than that, I am sure that, if necessary, he will kill anyone for her well-being. This is all? Fugaku asked coldly. No, the unfortunate guy squeezed out doomly and, without waiting for prodding, continued. Naruto knew that Kushina-sama's seal would fall. She asked me in advance to teach her how to enter someone else's subconscious and the ability to fight there. What? Namikaze asked quietly. She said that this way she could defeat the Kyubi where he is most vulnerable, and become a full-fledged Jinchuriki, without harming Kushina-sama and her future sister or brother, Shursui responded quietly. I did not refuse her this and, as I understand it, for good reason. Her plan worked, and she was able to defeat and save Kushina-sama, although she now had the full power of the QB. Now some inaccuracies and blind spots in your reports are clear, Namikaze said quietly. I have only one question, why? I don't know myself, but for some reason I believed in them. Shursui looked away. There is nothing surprising, Uzumakinarutoshippudenanime, Kushina's older brother, who had been silently listening, intervened. My clan has a small peculiarity, a tired look at those gathered, and he continues. Though I didn't think it would manifest itself in Naruto. It is very rare and mostly intuitive. What's this special thing, Akeo-sama? Minato turned to him. And why are you so sure that it manifested itself in my daughter? She's Namikaze. The strongest of our clan, the Uzumaki clan, can inspire inexplicable trust and win people over. Naturally, there are many restrictions. Akeo chuckled in response. One of the main conditions is that the user must consider this person a friend and sincerely sympathize with him. Eh? Shursui blinked stupidly. Yes, the man nodded. This is not a combat ability and cannot be used on enemies. From time immemorial it has served to strengthen bonds in the clan. Usually, the one who possessed this gift became a prominent figure in Yuzusho's life, a real leader who was unconditionally trusted and followed to death. That's why I'm surprised Naruto has it. Yes, she has changed a lot over the past 6 months, but even I didn't expect this. Throwing a knowing glance towards Fugaku and Minato, he adds, therefore, it is not surprising that Shursui decided to hold off on including this data in the report. Naruto probably asked him about it. Right, Shursui? Yes, nodded the poor guy, who suddenly found himself in the center of attention. Not always in direct text, but I asked? And since this did not pose a threat to the village or the family directly, you saw no reason to refuse. Akeo nodded understandingly. Yes, Shursui nodded guiltily. What do we do? Namikaze tiredly closed his eyes, addressing those present. There's no need to rush, Nara intervened. I don't know the details, but my son spoke very warmly of your daughter, Minato. And what Akeo-sama told, although unusual, does not pose a threat. Don't take hasty steps, it's better to wait until she wakes up and explains everything. Maybe it would be better to ask Sasuke. Mikoto suggested hesitantly. He clearly knows a lot more than he told us. It's no use, he won't say anything more, Shursui said confidently. He was already overly talkative today, which is completely unlike him. Sure? Fugaku's gaze became colder and harder. Yes, Shursui nodded. Have you seen his eyes, Fugaku-sama? Silence in response and confusion in the gaze. Don't you know how we get these eyes? The guy asked the head of his clan quite emotionally. Do you really think he'll say anything? You are right, unexpectedly for everyone, Fugaku agreed. He won't say, but I order him to begin intensive training and provide him with constant supervision, both overt and not. Aren't you going overboard, Fugaku? The others tried to reason with him. No, he must learn to be responsible for his words and actions, the head of the Uchiha snapped. You're making a mistake, the Hokage shook his head. But it's not for me to judge you. Hokage-sama, Kushina-sama has come to her senses. A scream interrupted the conversation, and a messenger from the hospital flew into the courtyard of the Yondam house. She asked you to come and listen to her. Rather, it requires. Namikaze Nariko, who had previously diligently pretended that she was not there and eavesdropped on the conversation of the elders, barely audibly whispered. The Hokage did not listen to the grumbling of the rest and simply moved into the hospital building to meet with his wife. The others also did not remain in place, but they could not move so quickly, and therefore Namikaze had a tangible advantage. How are you, Kushina? Asked, bursting into the Hokage's chamber. It's okay, Minato. The woman smiled faintly. As children? How's Naruto? Everything is fine, no harm was done to them. Naruto has not yet regained consciousness, but her condition is stable. Uzumaki's question was answered not by Namikaze, but by the head of Uzumaki, who came in after him. My people are conducting a full examination. Her seal is simply a masterpiece, however, we have not been able to find the key to it. Key? Namikaze was surprised. Nay-san, Kushina interrupted her husband, there is no need to worry. The kyubi is not dangerous, now. Do not touch the seal or try to change anything. Are you sure, Yamato? Akeo asked her seriously. Yes, in the subconscious it is impossible to lie, the woman smiled tiredly. The kyubi is not dangerous as long as it is in Naruto. Besides? The men asked in surprise. Besides, Naruto promised to tell everything when she wakes up, the woman answered unusually softly. And now I'm tired. Of course, rest. The men instantly agreed and, straightening the blanket, quickly left the room. Akeo, how is she really? Minato asked quietly, just out of earshot. Judging by the data they gave me, Emuto is now a pseudo-Jinchuriki, Uzumaki responded no less quietly. I don't know how Naruto did it, but I think it's best for us to follow Kushina's advice and wait for Naruto to awaken. So we have no choice but to wait, right? Namikaze grinned sadly in response, and without waiting for a reaction to his mostly rhetorical question, turned around and quickly left the hospital. The Hokage always has a lot to do, and due to recent events, he has twice as much to do, and he must do everything possible to keep his family safe. Don't worry about Kushina and Naruto, my people will look after them, came after him, and Minato, without turning around, waved his hand, indicating that he had heard what his relative had said. They have a busy week ahead, and some extra help couldn't hurt. The Hokage doesn't have time to lose his temper. Chapter 16. Omissions. Immediately after being discharged from the hospital, I was caught up in a whirlwind of events, and I came to my senses already at the table where everyone was celebrating Sasuke and I's engagement. The ceremony itself is not stored in my memory, it's just that I put on ceremonial clothes and the next second I'm already accepting congratulations at the table, and the rest of the time literally fell out of my memories. Although I'm not at all upset by this, because I still have a wedding ahead, in 2 or 3 years. I'll have time to admire it enough and get new impressions. No matter how these impressions become fatal, because no one cancelled envious people and now I clearly feel unkind glances. One thing calms me down. Sasuke is no better, only it's not the girls who nag him, but the guys. True, to deny that girls are more inventive in their revenge would be stupid, so I am in much more danger than my fiancé. The celebration lasted more than a day, however, we were sent to bed much earlier and we didn't make it to the end. However, something tells me that this did not upset anyone, because by that time the holiday was already in full swing and no one was paying attention to us. However, the turmoil did not end with just one engagement. The next day I was woken up by Kachan, who decided that she had given me enough time to recover and now I simply had to share and explain to her. No, I don't argue, she has every right to do this, but I didn't immediately understand why now, and not earlier or a little later? The answer turned out to be indecently simple. Before, I could not be touched at the insistence of the Irenans and my uncle, who unanimously argued that this was dangerous for my psychological health, and it was thanks to them that I practically did not stay in the hospital alone, and then Kachan just wanted to get everything done before Toussaint came to his senses after the party. I can't blame her for this. It will be easier for me to talk to Toussaint with the support of Kachan. I am sure that her presence will save me from many problems and questions, so I decided to support her desire to find out the details first, and looked up at her. Okay, Ka-chan, I agree. I will tell you what I can, but I warn you right away, you may not like the truth. It's better to know the truth than to invent various horrors for yourself, Naruto. Kachan gave me a sad smile, a smile that made me ache inside, because my truth is not at all what she wants to hear. I'm wondering why in your subconscious you look older, and why you're wearing a Sanin's cloak. Tell me, I want to know. Kachan, put up a barrier. I gave up. What I say is not for other people's ears, and it's better not to take risks. Fine, a nod of agreement, and after a few seconds my room is surrounded by a soundproof barrier, and Kachan's gaze turns to me again. I didn't have the strength to withstand this understanding and pleading look, and I began the story. I told her about my childhood, about the hatred and pain that haunted me then, about my successes and failures, about the dream that I carried through the years, about becoming a genin and my first mission. She told me about how she first learned about Kurama being sealed inside me and the realization that came much later that it was my own Tusan who did it. She told me about my first serious opponents and how I cried over the graves of Haku and Zabuza, about meeting Jiraiya and learning from him, about meeting Bachan and Shizunani. She told about Irika and her first friends. She told me how Sasuke left for Orochimaru, how I chased him, how as a result I was on the verge of life and death many times, but did not retreat. She told me about Jiraiya's death and her condition at that time, how hard it was for me to come to terms with it. She told us about the war, which took so much from us and forced us to grow up before our time, in which many of our friends died, and some became crippled. She talked about Sasuke's return in the first, most difficult years after the war, when the pain from losses was especially strong and we were looking for the strength to live. She told me about how she became an Anbu, how she started dating Uchiha, how she found support in this proud and cold bastard, how we became a family. She told us about our last mission and how we ended up here. By the end of my story, we both could no longer hold back our tears and sat hugging each other, trying to find support in each other. However, I did not tell everything, although most of it. Or rather, I kept silent about only 3 things. First, I didn't say that in that world I was born a boy and became a girl much later. I'm afraid it would be difficult for her to come to terms with this. And second, that I did not report that I had acquired the powers of all the bijou and that I was essentially Dadara's Jinchuriki, however, without him being sealed in me. And the last, third, was that Naruto of this world committed suicide, replacing it with that our consciousnesses simply merged and became one. This was partly true. I inherited all the memory of the local Naruto, but I don't know about the soul. If you follow the logic, we are the same person, so anything is possible. Or rather, I want to believe that this is so. Thank you for trusting me, Naruto, Kachan said quietly, burying her head in my hair. I can't even wrap my head around that this is possible. Sounds too incredible. However, it is true, I answered, sobbing, but I didn't dare raise my head. I was afraid to meet Kachan's eyes, afraid of what I could see in them. I'm really not quite the Naruto I was before. And Sasuke? Kachan asked her question. The same, I answered quietly. He was on that mission with me and died at the same time, and our lives have always been connected. It's clear, Kachan responded in a calm voice and opening her arms, made me look up at her. Naruto, I don't know what you have in mind, but remember one thing, you are my daughter, and I will not harm you. Raising her fist belligerently, she added, don't worry about Minato, I'll talk to him myself, as well as Fugaku. Thank you, I couldn't hold back my wide smile and relaxed. Kachan is not lying, she will really help. Then I have one more question, the last one, Kachan stroked my head. Which? I became interested, thrilled by the pleasant sensations that my mother's hands gave. Your seal, After hesitating for a second, Kachan continued, She must have a key. Where is it? He is always with me, I answered. Show? Certainly. Kachan immediately agreed, and I didn't refuse, although who would know how unpleasant it would be to call Geritora, especially considering where he settled. What's the matter, Naruto? The seal has been open for a long time. Why do you need me? The summoned one yelled displeasedly, stuttering for a second when he saw Kachan, and then drew attention to my appearance and added, Where are you? And what happened to you? Is this Kushina? But how? I myself saw how she and Minato died. Meet Kachan, this is Geritora, I said, ignoring the panicked cries of the scroll toad. He is the key to my seal, although I haven't called on him for a long time, because usually the seal is completely open and I only have enough mental effort to release Kurama's power, so there is no need for it. Hey! Do not ignore me! Was indignant at my neglect of Geritora, I said somewhat harshly. Hi! The little frog immediately calmed down. Geritora, we are now in a parallel world, I told him very honestly. And since I called you anyway, I want to ask you, about what? Geritora asked me cautiously. However, it was difficult to blame him for such a thing. My previous requests, said in such a tone, led to Jiraiya weakening my seal for the first time. Then I still didn't get along well, or rather, didn't get along at all, with Kurama, and it ended badly. Jiraiya miraculously survived then, and Geritora still considers himself guilty. For some reason he is sure that he could dissuade us if he were a little firmer. I need a contract with the Gama clan in order to learn the Sennin mod again, I explained. Therefore, I ask you to go to Miyabokuzen and talk with Fukasaku-san and Shimabie-san about concluding a contract with me. Wouldn't it be easier to ask Minato about this? Kachan asked me. As far as I know, he has the right to give a summoning scroll. I agree, it will be much easier this way, Geritor's Kachan assented. And it's easier to pass the exam. Tosen will have too much to explain, I frowned. It was you who believed me right away, because in your subconscious you saw much more than I would like to show. I couldn't lie to you even if I wanted to, and you know this very well, this won't work with Tosen. You're right, after thinking a little, Kachan nodded in agreement. Minato doesn't need to know everything. It is I, the pure-blooded Uzumaki, who knows that you are my daughter and not anyone else. Minato might not believe it. What does it have to do with the fact that you are a pure-blooded Uzumaki? Kachan? I was instantly hooked on the clause. I really found it very interesting. She emphasized these words in a too significant tone, and it was just interesting to know about the clan to which I belonged all my life. In that world there was no one to enlighten me about its features. Then I'll explain. Kachan shook her head negatively and, seeing my offended look, explained with a chuckle. First, I must talk to Akeo and he will help you install a mind protection. I have Kurama. I was indignant. He won't let anyone take control of me. I do not argue, Kachan agreed. But you must admit, this is an irrational use of Bija powers, and why? It is much easier to get clan protection, because the one that was installed for you before was probably destroyed after your unification, so you need to make a new one. But, I tried to object. Do not argue, Kachan shouted at me menacingly and, seeing my offended look, softened a little. Oh well. No offense. It won't take much time and will bring considerable benefits. In addition, you will have a unique opportunity to learn the secret knowledge of our clan. Agree? Said a growling voice in the back of my mind. Uzumaki will not harm a blood relative, and you have already passed the test. What are you talking about, Kurama? I instantly became interested. And anyway, where have you been all this time? I slept and absorbed the forces I had absorbed, he answered me. But it doesn't matter now, agreed to Kushina's offer. The protection of the Uzumaki clan will be useful to you. Don't you know how people with Bijou may be treated? Don't forget, there hasn't been a fourth war here yet, and we don't have the best memories left. Okay, if you say so, I agreed under double pressure. Well, fine. Kachan gave me a smile. Then I will immediately leave for my bokuzen. Gerator announced his decision and began to put down the reverse summoning seals, while at the same time telling me, expect guests soon, Naruto. As soon as the last word died down, he disappeared. Well, it's time for me too, Kachan picked up. Soon the others will start waking up, and I don't even have breakfast ready. I watch her with surprise and ask Kurama, don't you think she's too calm after everything I said? Calm? A chuckle was heard. You were talking to a clone, little thing. The real Kushina is now in the Uzumaki clan, and I don't envy them, because when the information from the dispelled clone reaches her, and, as confirmation of his words, a terrible roar was heard somewhere in the distance and the earth shook. I hope they can calm her down. I shuddered. This is the only thing left for you. Kurama agreed with my words. Chapter 17. The Calm Before the Storm. To my surprise, no one asked me any more questions, and they tried not to touch me at all. There was a feeling that everyone suddenly forgot about what happened and nothing happened at all. However, the almost completely destroyed training grounds of the Uzumaki clan and my family convinced me otherwise. But otherwise everything remained as before. It was strange, although largely understandable. After all, after our conversation with Kachan, another one took place between Tasan, Sasuke's parents, and Kachan, but behind closed doors, and I don't know what they talked about. True, Kurama convinced me that Kachan dispelled the suspicions of the others and came up with some kind of plausible story that explained our oddities, but at the same time left it a secret that we were from another world. When I asked how he knew this, I only received mysterious silence and something about the relationship of the chakras. I no longer had the strength to be amazed, and I decided to take his word for it, although it was strange that we got off so easily. Sasuke almost strangled me when he found out that I told Kachan everything. Although he was not angry for long and with words, "Dobe, such a dobe, but mine," he hugged and forgave, which I sincerely rejoiced at, although I later took revenge for the dobe. However, this was not the only thing that worried me and did not add to my joy. It turned out that it was also decided to reduce our communication with Sasuke. Now we only saw each other on missions and a few joint training sessions. The rest of the time, both of us found something to do or were not allowed to be left alone. It was difficult not to notice the surveillance, even if it was ANBU, and only after a month of such behavior did I find out what was the matter. It turned out that my words about the possible problems caused by Kachan's childbirth were prophetic. The breaking of Kachan's seal did not go unnoticed. Our small battle caused even greater confusion. We are very lucky that the Hokage's house has strong barriers and not a single sensor can tell exactly what happened there. No, this did not allow me to keep it a secret that I was now a Jinchuriki. Only a deafblind person in Konoha did not know about this, and there were no such people in my native settlement. This was the stumbling block. The only thing that saved us was that those who knew and saw everything seemed to be silent, because they were devoted to Tusan, but this could not last forever. Remember when I said that it seemed to me that our engagement was carried out in a terrible hurry? So there you go. I was not mistaken, and it did not seem to me it was so. My new status added problems, because all the chronicles said that it was the Uchihas who could control the Kyuubi. Their strengthening influenced the political balance of power. Or rather, some people didn't like the fact that the clan was completely loyal to Tusan. It was thanks to their support and Tsunade that San was able to become a full-fledged Hokage, and not a toy of the elders and another nasty type, will become even stronger. That is why everything was done in the shortest possible time, until no one got wind that the main characters were not Itachi and Nariko. If the old people found out sooner, Sasuke and I will never see an engagement, and even now everything hangs by a thread. Nobody wants to risk and trust the Uchihos with such power, although they understand that the Red Eye are the only ones who can help and save in case of unforeseen situations. Now Toussaint is seriously trying to pick my brains and trying to persuade me to become Danzo's student, because he is one of the few futon masters in Konoha and can teach me a lot. Toussaint resists with all his might and does not give up his position, but the training problem had to be solved. It's better for Sasuke and I to disappear from Konoha for a while until passions subside, until the moment when we finally reach the required level of power and can decide our own destiny. However, my tossing around about finding a teacher was decided a week before Chunin Shuriken, right after Kachan gave birth. It turned out that Tsunade and Jiraiya arrived in the village, who in this world were practically no different from themselves in that one. The only thing, Bie-chan, she was in much better condition than in our first meeting in that world, but the breakdown and old pain were still felt. They arrived at the same time, and I was glad to see them, alive. I especially got it from Erosenin, who was my godfather here too, but here, he didn't die, he's alive. My happiness knew no bounds. I missed him so much, the man who had become my family, whom I considered my grandfather, but in that world I couldn't even bury him properly. I just couldn't find his body. Therefore, once a year I visited AIM and stayed there exactly for a day, so as not to appear until the next anniversary. Now he's nearby. It took me a huge effort to hold back my tears, but I couldn't deny myself and hug him. However, they forgave me for this impulse, deciding that I simply could not restrain myself from joy, because he had not visited us for a long time. You've grown up, Naruto, pushing me away from him and looking at me from all sides. My godfather began to praise me. A real beauty. There's probably no end to suitors. You won't believe it, Grandpa. I responded, brushing away happy tears, but there is none. Afraid. Is it your father's anger? Bachan asked mockingly. Minato. Me, muttered Sasuke, who had been invited along with the rest of the family, and was patiently waiting for news from the delivery room. I mean, they're afraid of me, he explained, catching Tsunade's surprised look. After all, I am her fiancé. Ho-oh! Bachan extended, and judging by her look, she will still give him a couple of checks. What a pity that we couldn't come to the engagement party. By the way, Naruto, Fukasaku-sama contacted me and literally demanded to take you on as a student, Jiraiya told me, simultaneously throwing sympathetic glances towards Sasuke. This means that Geratora has already reached them. I was happy. Agree. Harada? Toussaint's voice was heard behind him. Who is this? My friend from the Gama clan. I showed him to Kachan, I answered, and was already preparing for interrogation when the doors of the chamber swung open. Hokage-sama, your wife gave birth, the Irionin who came out informed us. Boys. Weight 2,300 and 2,500. Surprisingly strong babies. Can I see her? Instantly forgetting about everything, he asked the Dr. Toussaint. Of course, but not for long, Irene nodded in response. But for the rest, it's better to wait until tomorrow. I had to obey the demands of the professional and wait for the appointment. At the same time, it was possible to nag Jiraiya about the contract and get it before the exams. However, I received it only the next day, and then after the intervention of Kachan, who, as soon as we entered, immediately demanded the contract from Jiraiya, stopping all objections with a glance. A normal conversation followed, and at the end Kachan asked how long she and Bachan would stay in Konoha. When I heard the answer, I was happy. They arrived for the entire exam, and only after its completion will they leave to travel again. Toussaint, what if we go with them? My question silenced everyone. What are you talking about? And who is it we? He instantly turned to me. Me and Sasuke. I set aside the summoning scroll entrusted to me and calmly met his gaze. There is no need to worry about being overheard. The chamber is wrapped in barriers so that a mosquito will not approach unnoticed, and the good uncles and aunts from the Uzumaki clan will make sure that no one even thinks otherwise. For example, I'm with Bachan, and he with Erosenin. Who did you call Bachan, brat? Tsunade instantly jumped up. Who is this Erosenin here? Jiraiya echoed her. Not a bad option. Akeo-san unexpectedly intervened and stepped in the way of the Sanins approaching me. This would solve all the problems, it would just need to be adjusted a little. Although I would like to hear your thoughts first, I think the others would too. Throwing a stern look at the instantly faded adults, my uncle finished and looked at me questioningly. Certainly, I nodded. As far as I know, there are now a lot of opponents of our future wedding with Sasuke, or rather Uchiha Gaines. Some people decided that, thanks to their little eyes, they would subjugate the Kyuubi, which is now sealed within me, right? Yes, Toussaint nodded, interested. Now Sasuke and I are the weak links and we can be easily eliminated, I continued. Yes, if something happens, we will resist and can harm the enemy. But this will not change the main thing, we are too vulnerable. We could be sent on a mission at any time, a small information leak and you won't have to worry about us anymore. I smile somewhat nervously and directly meet Uncle Akeo's searching gaze. I continue. The Hokage and the head of the Uchiha clan have always had many enemies, and revenge through children. What could be simpler? Especially if one of the kids a girl with an interesting genome. Uzumaki women have always been valued. And? Uncle's raised eyebrow and expressionless look, but for some reason I'm sure he's happy. We'd better disappear temporarily and start training harder. Sanins can best help us with this. They have both strength and reputation. No one will be surprised that we were released with them. Many, on the contrary, will be jealous. And the elders with this mummy will not be able to object to Senjuheim's desire to take a student or student, similarly with Jiraiya, because they themselves have been demanding this from them for a long time, I responded. Yes, they will send a capture or liquidation team on our trail, but it will be easy to get rid of it. Risky Senju narrowed her eyes. Besides, who said that I want to take on another student? Sasuke, and I don't need training, I answered. We will almost immediately go to the drafts, where we will undergo training. Afterwards we will go to the ruins of Uzushio or to a Nikobie. In general, we will not be lost, but we will keep in touch through our call with Erosenin. Fine, Toussaint nodded. We will consider your proposal and let you know, but now visiting time is over and you are leaving the ward. Uncle Akeo interrupted Toussaint and kicked us out the door. Now all that remains is to wait for Ka-chan to recover, and then, there we will persuade Toussaint through joint efforts. Chapter 18. Gaara. As soon as I left Ka-chan's room, I was intercepted by Sakura, who wanted to talk to me about something. To be honest, when I saw her, I was even a little scared. We haven't seen each other often lately, and not once since Sasuke and I's engagement have we been left alone. However, I could not refuse her request to walk around Konoha and talk. And if you choose between her and the Sanins eager to communicate, I think my choice was pretty obvious. Although it's a pity that you won't be able to avoid them forever, and if Toussaint also gets involved, ask, perhaps, for political asylum from your uncle? Naruto, I wanted to apologize, Sakura told me decisively, as soon as I moved a little away from my disgruntled godparents. For what? I was sincerely surprised and, pushing the door outside, finally got out of the hospital that smelled of medicine. I don't like hospitals. they bring back too many memories that are far from joyful, especially if I remember my childhood. However, now this didn't bother me much. I was much more surprised by my friend's behavior. Sakura rarely admits her mistakes. I wonder what came over her. I wanted to apologize for my behavior, Naruto, Sakura responded, hanging her head low. I was selfish and didn't see anything around me. She always ran after Sasuke-kun and did not notice your feelings. I humiliated you, I'm sorry. I behaved inappropriately, and I will understand if you stop communicating with me. You have nothing to apologize for, Sakura. I smiled sincerely. A stone just lifted from my soul after her words. It's good that she finally found the strength to accept reality. Although I'm glad that you finally understood everything and found the strength to move on. Naruto, she whispered quietly and wanted to add something, but she was interrupted by a wild cry. We look at each other and take off. As soon as we turned the corner, from where the cry of pain was heard, a familiar picture appeared before my eyes. Yes, the place was different, and neither was the time, but the characters were the same. Just like once in the distant past. Kankuro holds Konohamaru by the chest and instills horror in the guys with his very appearance. How familiar, let go. I tell him coldly, moving closer and squeezing his hand. Slight hand chakra enhancement, and out of surprise and pain, he lets go of Konohamaru, who instantly jumps away and hides behind Sakura, who wisely stayed away. Once I'm sure the boy is okay, I let go of the puppeteer's hand and jump away. I have no desire to fight, or to provoke a conflict, because the Uchiha patrols could not have missed something like this. Soon one of them will be here, and then Kankuro will be in trouble, and Konoha doesn't need a conflict right now, even one not provoked by her. However, it's not just that. I don't want to argue with people who can become true friends. Who are you? Kankuro asked indignantly, and I could only roll my eyes. I had already forgotten how arrogant he was as a child. Although, not only in childhood, but later he recognized and accepted me, and so, he remained the same. Why did you get in? By what right do Tsunagen roam Konoha? Sakura intervened, who had already managed to calm Konohamaru, and now he and his friends were hiding behind her. I like her better this calm and collected. Now, more than ever before, she resembles herself from that world. Now there is no need to worry about the rear, she will cover you. We arrived for the exam, Temari responded, looking at us with a contemptuous look, that before that she had looked with indifference at the massacre committed by her brother. Do you think this is sufficient justification for your actions? I asked, raising an eyebrow inquiringly, sensing a familiar chakra nearby. And more than one. Apparently, Sasuke is walking under escort again, only this time Itachi performs his function. However, something tells me that he perceives such a convoy easier than when Obito walks almost arm in arm with him. Here's someone, but it's difficult for him to tolerate, and it's not even about the hatred brought from the other world, but about the fact that Obito has a specific thing for Rin and he can talk about her forever, which greatly infuriates Sasuke. Teen generally does not like to hear about others. Who are you to tell us what to do? Kankuro asked irritably and pulled out a puppet from behind his back. Hey! Are you still planning to use Karasu? Temari was alarmed. Stop it! We don't need problems. By the time the problems come, we'll be done here, Kankuro answered his sister with a chuckle, without taking his contemptuous gaze off us. I'm not involved in this, Temari responded instantly. That's right. There are much more painless ways to commit suicide, Sasuke's voice full of mockery was heard. I turn my head there and see that he has comfortably settled down on a tree and is now spectacularly tossing a pebble. Catching my gaze, he barely winked and, once again catching a pebble, spectacularly crushed it. Show off! And by the way, Where did he lose Itachi? He, on the other hand, ensures. Kurama told me and, without waiting for the question, added, he hid his chakra, so you can't feel it. I myself found it only by smell, and only because I knew what and where to look approximately. Another annoying child Kankuro literally hissed and prepared to attack. Crap! Where does Gaara go? I don't want to fight now, and it's not that I'm afraid or the possible consequences. Where did you just come from? About. Here comes Tanuki. Kurama growled cheerfully, and I felt familiar chakra very close. Crap! And why didn't I feel this before? Crap! How I missed the Sannin skills! I feel like a blind kitten. Stop it, Kankuro. A cold, emotionless voice, and I see Gaara, who appeared on the same tree where Sasuke was sitting, only on the other side. You are a disgrace to our village. Gaara, Kankuro stammered. Eh. And nothing has changed here, although, why change? Gaara Jinchuriki, his Kachan is dead, and Tusan Kazakage. This world is too reminiscent of the past, like a reflection, albeit a happier one for me. Although who knows, it's not my fault, you're too carried away, he interrupted indifferently. This is not why we came to Konoha. So, you are the genin who will represent Suna at Chunin Shuriken? Looking with interest at the unusually small dog, but not yet Nara. Yes, Gaara responded verbosely, as always, and moved downwards with Shunshin. A short glance towards his relatives, and Kankuro quickly puts Karasu behind his back and freezes, afraid to even breathe. I would say that I am glad to meet a brother in misfortune or happiness, although, depending on which way you look at it, I chuckle. But not in this case. Brother? Gaara raised an eyebrow questioningly. About. My mistake, you don't feel anything, Ichi. A malicious smile creeps onto my face. Naruto, it's still early. Kurama stops me. There were too many spectators, and Shikaku did not recover after helping us. Do not rush. I know. I respond somewhat irritably, and already out loud, turning to Gaara. My omission. I'm too used to hiding the presence of my furry friend. For a moment I allow my eyes to become vertical and sparkle red. My name. Namikaze Naruto, dog no Gaara. I look forward to meeting you at the exam. Risky. Kurama remarks to me, seeing the flicker of madness in Gaara's eyes. He was too uncontrollable at that age, wouldn't you know? That's nice. I chuckle in response. I have to give him Shikaku, and this will be easiest to do in the Forest of Death. There are fewer observers there, and it will be easier to do this, not to mention the fact that during this week it will be possible to pump him up with chakra so that he does not lose. I wouldn't want to lose his support, and I'm used to this crazy person. It's too dangerous, but you're right. Kurama agreed with my arguments. It will be much easier this way. He will find you in the forest himself, and you won't have to chase the boy. What am I talking about? I concluded contentedly. Wait, what do you mean? Temari tried to stop me. It doesn't matter, the one who needs it will understand, I stopped and responded. Answer. Gaara's older sister was indignant. Naruto just wants to say that you don't have time for this. Sasuke grunts and lands next to me. If you don't want problems, then get out, otherwise there will be a patrol here soon. Or, topic, he raises an eyebrow questioningly and looks around the dog family, and then continues. Do you really want to explain to the patrol what you were just doing? What? Kankuro began. What is your name? Interrupts Gaara's never-begun argument. Uchiha Sasuke, Sasuke answered, looking at my future friend with a gloomy look, and he definitely will be, or I'm not Uzumaki Naruto. Haruno Sakura, Sakura responded chokily, although it was unlikely that her name could interest Gaara, or rather, such a Gaara. Well, see you in the exam. Giving us another cold look, he said, and turning 180 degrees, briefly commanded his relatives, "Let's leave." Hi! His brother and sister instantly agree and follow their little brother. I calmly follow them with my gaze, and waiting until they disappear around the bend, I calmly ask, "Lack of patrol, your tricks, Itachi-san? Although, maybe I should just call you Aniki now." "I don't mind, I always dreamed of Yamato." Another Uchiha jumps down in front of me and, looking at me with interest, asks, "When did you notice me?" "From the very beginning." I see his bewilderment and some frustration. I say, "Actually, I spotted Sasuke at first, and just out of curiosity I scanned who his guard was now." I slap myself on the forehead and, carefully pretending to be embarrassed, correct myself. "Ouch! I'm sorry." "A security guard, and noticed you. When you hid your chakra, I lost you." "Here's how," Itachi drawled thoughtfully. "My omission." "Well, now it's your turn," I calmly stated, noticing how Sasuke carefully hides his grin at the sight of his perplexed brother. "Let me explain, you didn't answer the question. Lack of patrols your tricks or not?" "Not really." Itachi shook his head negatively, but was in no hurry to speak further, thinking about something. "Nasen wants to say that the patrols are busy. There are too many guests, and there simply aren't enough people. Conflicts break out here and there," Sasuke chuckles. "Therefore, Itachi and I were asked to help in this sector. So we can say that for the next hour we are a patrol. The rest are busy, because some incident happened nearby with Ambassador Daimyo." Konohamaru's half-stifled squeak was heard, and he, noticing that all eyes involuntarily crossed on him, quickly babbled, "Thank you for your help." Bow, and before he runs away with his friends we hear, "Bye." I think I can guess what kind of incident it was, I snort, looking after the running grandson of the third Konohamaru. He's still a prankster. Agree. A heavy sigh is heard nearby, and I don't even have anything to blame Sasuke for. I remember very well how the first few years after his return, Konohamaru often visited us. There was nowhere to hide from him then, and he kept trying to challenge me, and then Sasuke, to a fight. "I suggest you eat a couple of dangos," Itachi said calmly. "Are you patrolman?" I turned to him interestedly. I didn't want to go back home, especially considering the Sanins with Tosan at their head were probably waiting for me there. But I also didn't want to set anyone up. "I don't think it's okay to skimp on your responsibilities." "Good idea. Don't worry. My call will do just fine without me." Sparks of laughter flashed in Itachi's eyes. "And in case something more serious happens, I'll leave a couple of clones. I think this is enough to maintain order." "Then I see no reason to refuse." I answered this proposal with a wide smile and, turning to my friend, added, "Yes, Sakura?" "I don't even know." She hesitated, looking uncertainly towards Sasuke, who only rolled his eyes at such behavior, for which he received an elbow in the ribs from me. "Agree, Sakura-chan. I have long wanted to get to know the Ototo team better," Itachi asked softly, looking at our maneuvers with a slight mockery. "In return, I promised to share my memories of Chunin Shuriken." Naturally, after such a generous offer, none of us had any reason to refuse, and we happily followed Itachi. After all, the exam is in a week and we need to collect as much information as possible. Although Sasuke and I were just curious to listen to stories, because Itachi is unlikely to share reliable information with us. No, he won't lie, but he won't tell the whole truth, much less about how the exam will be held this year, and even more so he will remain silent. However, even so, his story can be useful. Who knows what will happen this year? And the information will not be superfluous. Chapter 19. Tales. I had no idea that Itachi had such a turbulent youth. However, he is not too old even now. But it all started innocently enough. He took us to one of the many dango cafes in Konoha. The only thing I noticed for myself was that it had separate booths and there was an opportunity to discuss everything relatively confidentially. However, Itachi did not put up a barrier against listening and simply began to talk about how about a year ago he was taken as an escort to Chunin Shuriken in Kumo. It included the standard 3 stages, but it went a little differently from ours, although the first was still written, but Itachi deliberately omitted its description. The story about the second stage was colorful. There they forced the participants to first fight with enemy teams, which were determined randomly, at the bottom of the canyon, with both teams launching from different ends, but that was not all. The main point was that the teams were given half of the talisman, after collecting which they could move on, or rather, it served as the key to open the way to the place of further testing. The process of passing itself was as follows. The teams had to meet in the middle of the path at specially equipped sites in order to decide in battle with each other who was worthy to go further to the next test. However, before they reached the battlefield, the teams had to go through a path full of traps. Naturally, he didn't say a word about mortality, but it was perfectly clear to Sasuke and I that it was high. In addition, there was a condition that was already familiar to us. The team could only complete this stage with its full complement. If there was a loss of at least one participant, no matter during the journey or the fight, the team was eliminated. However, even if the team completed all of the above without serious losses and was able to collect the talisman, an examiner appeared in front of them and told them where to apply it in order to move on. After completing what was required, a passage in the rock opened in front of the team. Or rather, its disguise fell off, and they moved on. The third stage began immediately as they entered the cave arches. Tired and unvigilant genin were caught in genjutsu, and told that 3 passages were appearing in front of them and they must separate. When the genin did this in an illusion, a few minutes later they were pushed together, simultaneously suggesting that they did not know each other, and were enemies. How Itachi admired the skills of the genjutsu masters from Kumo. It took another 10 minutes to bring him back to the story. Well, then he told how the genin began to fight among themselves and in the end one of the team emerged victorious, if at all. True, one of the teams, which included Shursui's sister, was able to remove the impact and pass as a whole, but that's why she's an Uchiha, and also the sister of a recognized genius. It was an interesting story and educational, but it didn't change much for us. After all, we are not going to the exam in Kumo, but we are taking it in Konoha. Itachi purposefully avoided any mention of the exams being held in our village, and I don't believe that he doesn't remember any of them, deliberately leading the conversation in a different direction. He even forgot to mention that if the entire team does not show up for the exam, it will be eliminated. He simply focused on passing the second stage. Okay though. Maybe it's for the better. However, I somehow forgot about Sakura, on whom Itachi's story made an indelible impression, and it seems that she began to seriously think about not going to him. This was also noticed by Sasuke, who first glanced at our teammate, and then turned it to his Aniki. Itachi, realizing his mistake, immediately decided to distract us with stories about his adventures after receiving the bandage, and to his credit, he clearly succeeded. Take his story where he was on a mission with Shurasui, and everything would have been fine, but one of them, at the request of the customer, had to pretend to be a girl. And this lucky guy turned out to be Itachi. I haven't laughed so much in a long time. At least his story about all the horrors that he had to endure in order to become a true lady was familiar to me. For the first time after activating Kagaya's gift, she was horrified. One wax depilation is worth it. It's good that for kunoichi everything is much simpler and excess hairs are removed with one tincture, but for ordinary women, once was enough for me, and then I rushed to Sakura for help, and she told me everything in detail. However, the horrors of hair removal were not the only thing Itachi told us. The description of how he learned to walk on Okobo was worth a separate mention. Fortunately, all Uchihas, and indeed shinobi in general, have an ideal sense of balance. But even so, although that's not all, he continued his story by saying that they tried to pluck his eyebrows and whiten his face, and then put on makeup. And he told all this in person. However, all good things come to an end, and this day is no exception. Before we had time to turn around, it turned out that several hours had already passed, and we had to leave. By a common decision, or rather, with a soft smile and a wave of ki from Itachi, it was decided to see Sakura off first, and then me. All the way, my newly minted Aniki enthusiastically continued to tell ridiculous cases from his practice, and there were surprisingly many of them. So, for example, the infamous Tora turned out to be far from the first cat of Mrs. Shinjimi. And all of them were called Tora, and they were also of a similar color. However, the color and name were not the main thing. The main thing was their hereditary nasty character, which had spoiled the lives of many generations of genin, because they had to catch the runaway cat. Although it is worth noting that all the cats were extremely prepared and many suspected that they were descendants of Nico, although there was no evidence. But who needs them? Certainly not the genin who once again received marks from their claws or fell into their own traps. Hearing about other people's failures is always fun, especially when the narrator is good. By the time we parted with Sakura at her house, my stomach already hurt from laughing. However, the whole time we were laughing, although only Sakura and I were laughing, the Uchihas carefully kept their faces and only allowed grins. I couldn't shake the feeling that Itachi was just watching us and trying to understand something. Just what? However, I could not understand this, and now, being escorted home by my brothers, I was diligently racking my brains over it. You cudgel, when you were being kind to Gaara, your red eyes sparkled. Kurama's voice intervened in my thoughts when there were only a few minutes left to walk to the house. Or did you seriously think that he didn't notice? Or did you consider it not worth attention? I said, slightly confused at this statement from my friend. No, are you serious? He was sincerely amazed. Oh, Uzumaki, you have always amazed me with your incomprehensible stupidity. And I, without even descending into the subconscious, could understand that he was now raising his eyes to the ceiling, and his imagination helpfully painted such a picture. Although, to give you credit, it only appears in relation to those in whom you believe. Only this Itachi is not the one you knew in that world, and it's time for you to understand this. I'm sorry, Kurama, you're right. I repented. But don't worry, he's not dangerous to me. He's an Uchiha, which means he's always dangerous. Kurama grumbled dissatisfied. And in general, you have already arrived. Yes, of course. I agreed, if only he would no longer pester me with his moralizing, and drew attention to the reality around me. It turned out that we had actually already reached my house, and now I need to say goodbye to my guides. Thank you for spending turning to the Uchihas, I said, and without even trying to hide the hope in my voice, asked, won't you come for tea? Thank you, but we still have work to do, Itachi chuckled, clearly feeling someone else's attention, which the relatives watching from the window did not even try to hide. It was stupid to blame him for his refusal. I would gladly run away myself, but alas, it won't work. Something happened? Asked a more specific question to Sasuke, who also sensed surveillance. Ero-sennin and Bie-chan, I responded sourly. And I'm not me if Tosan isn't present there as well. And what have you done? Sasuke was genuinely surprised. They always doted on you, but here you get such attention? Pursing my lips, I cast a dissatisfied glance at him and see his eyes widen for a second, but immediately returned to their previous appearance. He seemed to understand what he said. It was in that world that they doted on me and always supported me in everything, but whatever? Bachan then, because of me, did not declare the subject a nuevopoder and even devoted considerable effort to searching for him. Here the situation is somewhat different, although in general I still remain their favorite goddaughter. However, it's worth clarifying the situation for Itachi, and it would be nice for Sasuke himself to know that I tried to negotiate our training outside the village. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. I grabbed their hands and dragged them inside. Come on, I'll tell you everything. We actually have things to do. Itachi tried to be indignant, but somehow sluggishly and unconvincingly. And Sasuke said, barely audible, and by the way, who are Ero-sennin and Bie-chan? This is what she calls Jiraiya-san and Tsunadeheim. Sasuke responded no less quietly. Your business will wait. I intervened in their conversation. Let's go. Okay, Enai-san, he said calmly and patted Sasuke on the shoulder. Naruto wouldn't bother us over trifles, and we have half an hour left. I nodded vigorously at the words on topic. Okay, but half an hour, no more. He gave in under our pressure. I'm home, I notified everyone, entering the house and looking at the Sanins peeking out from the kitchen with a gentle smile. Seeing these smiles, she quickly jabbered, I have guests. If something happens, we are in my room. Hello, the Uchiha bowed to them. Hello, Tsunade nodded. Well, let's not interfere, Bachan reports and pushes Ero-sennin back into the kitchen, but after a menacing glance in my direction and a demonstrative cracking of knuckles, Naruto, don't expect to avoid the conversation. Certainly, I agreed accommodatingly, grabbed the Uchihas who did not understand anything by the hands and dragged them upstairs. And what was that? Itachi asked confused when we were in my room and I began to set up a barrier against eavesdropping. This was Naruto's appearance to the people, Sasuke chuckled. Get used to it, Aniki, she's always like this, and now you also fall into the family category. Don't make me a monster! I was indignant, finishing the required chain of seals and setting up the barrier. But he's right. I heard Kurama laugh. You are always like this. So, why are the Sanins so unhappy? Kurama Sasuke didn't let me answer. I tried to make them happy that they would have students in the next few years, I reluctantly responded. And Tu-san and Ikawaji-sama agreed with me. What, did she just say that? Sasuke was amazed and began to look at me for damage. Not really, I responded and gave the Uchiha a slap on the back of the head who had begun to loosen his hands. I simply expressed the opinion that you and I should temporarily disappear from Konoha, and that apprenticeship with the Sannin is a good cover. Now their reaction is clear. Itachi chuckled, looking at how I was chasing his Otoro with a pillow, and there was no point in letting go. Well, actually, that's not what they're unhappy about, probably. I responded to his words and reluctantly put the pillow back in place. Still, this is a serious conversation, and there is no place for childishness here, and I can strangle Sasuke later. Correct thoughts, Kurama grumbled approvingly. I have long offered you to get rid of the Uchiha in your sleep, but you still refused. The world will be cleaner without them. You again? I was indignant. Calm down already. Moreover, here the death of one Uchiha will not solve anything. Their clan is alive and has no plans to die. It's a pity, said Red's voice full of regret. Yes? Was surprised by the topic, distracting me from the fight with Kurama. And then what? Well, I drawled, but seeing Sasuke's demanding look, I gave up and said, I just said that we don't need their training and, as soon as we leave Konoha with them, we'll go to the plain of summoned animals, and then we can look at the ruins of Uzushio or to a Nikobe. What, did she just say that? Sasuke was amazed and seeing my nod, he smeared his face with his palm. Kami-sama, why am I doing this? Hey! I was indignant. No offense, Naruto, but you really were stupid, Itachi chuckled. Without you I know, I pursed my lips. However, then it seemed to me that this was the only possible way to attract their attention and force them to take us with them. Wow! What clever thoughts you had then, it turns out, were wandering. Kurama drawled admiringly, and already with a sarcasm, but why don't I know? Don't interfere. I was indignant. I must somehow justify my behavior. I waved it off. Doesn't make sense, Itachi nodded, but that's why it seemed to me that after my words both brunettes looked at each other and barely grinned. Glitches, definitely glitches. The Sanins could not ignore such a blatant challenge, and now, having received an official order, they will agree, most likely. They will agree, no doubt, I nodded. They don't want to receive an invitation to a funeral in 6 months or even earlier. You're right. Itachi's gaze instantly hardened. We'll take care of it. Naruto, is that all, or is there anything else you want to please us with? Sasuke asked. Looking at him, I met eyes full of determination. Somehow I don't like it. This is exactly how he looked when he left for Orochimaru. A look full of confidence in his decision. Maybe I shouldn't have raised the topic of our precarious situation? No matter how stupid he does. Don't worry, Naruto, Sasuke noticed my anxiety. I won't do anything stupid. A chuckle and an eloquent glance towards Itachi, and he adds, and they won't let me. I agree, Naruto. Itachi instantly regained his friendly smile, however, it did not touch his eyes, which looked extremely seriously. Nobody will allow him to do anything stupid. The main thing is that you don't do them yourself, I grumbled, and glancing at the alarm clock that was standing on my table, I began to remove the barrier. Half an hour has passed, explained her actions to them. About. Indeed, it's time for us. Itachi was surprised and went out together with the topic. Having already put on his sandals and getting ready to leave, he said, Thank you for your hospitality, Naruto. We are glad that you consider us worthy of trust. Bow to someone behind my back, and he is already turning to his otuto. Let's go, Sasuke. Yes, Sasuke agrees. See you later, Naruto. Have a good trip, I said goodbye too. Well, now would you like to explain everything, Naruto? I heard Tosan's voice behind me, and I began to turn in his direction with caution. One glance was enough for me to understand that it would be impossible to escape. They say that a white stripe is followed by a black one. I have the last one now. Apparently, Providence decided that I was already too lucky. I hope that after the conversation I will remain alive. Chapter 20. Disruption. Can you imagine, Tosan? I exclaimed, sincerely hoping that I would be able to distract him, and the execution would be cancelled. What? He looked at me with a very skeptical look. Itachi-san allowed me to call myself a Nikki, I declared enthusiastically, hearing Kurama laughing nervously in the back of my mind. And he said that he had always dreamed of such an Yamato. Actually, he said he just wanted a Yamato. Kurama snorted. Don't interfere, I muttered. Or do you want to explain things to Tosan? And don't forget about Bia-chan with Arrow Senin. You'd think my comments would change something. Red chuckled. Congratulations, Tosan calmly said, and turning around, went to the kitchen, from where he heard. Thank you for the tea, Tsunade-sama. What are you doing? Kurama howled as I took off and flew into the kitchen, but I ignored his words. What? Tosan asked, looking up from his mug of tea. You won't ask anything? Burst out from me. Will you answer? Tosan answered the question with a question. I can't stand his gaze and look away. Here you see, he chuckled and, putting the mug aside, continued in a calm voice. You know, Naruto, maybe I'm a lousy father if I haven't been able to understand my children for so long. You're the best indicator of this, but I'm a good judge of people. I hope. At least the ruler cannot do without this. I look hesitantly in his direction and freeze, hypnotized by his gaze. He deliberately looks into my eyes, allowing me to read all the emotions there. I knew you before and saw perfectly how you changed a little more than 6 months ago, daughter. I won't lie, I'm glad about these changes, although I don't know the reason. Minato! Bachan and Erosenin said harshly in unison, which surprised me, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I know, Tsunade-sama, sensei, Tosan responded, but did not take his eyes off me. I won't ask what's wrong, I promised it to Kushina. I'm ready to wait until you decide to tell everything yourself. It's enough for me to know that you are my daughter, that's all. He finally takes his eyes off me and takes the mug of tea again. Tosan, I whisper quietly and impulsively jumping up to him, hug him. Thank you? Well, calm down. He hesitated for a second, but then I felt strong arms hugging me. The sensations are unusual, more precisely, not the same as with Sasuke, but I feel warm. I don't notice when tears begin to flow from my eyes. I don't know why I'm crying. These are not only my tears, but also those of those fragments of the personality of the local Naruto. We both missed Tosan's warmth. We both felt lonely without it. Kachan is definitely okay, but Kachan, this is the warmth and comfort of home, and then Sen, protection and confidence that there is someone to protect you. And it doesn't matter at all that I have long grown beyond the age when I needed protection, that sometimes I myself am required to protect others. Tosan has finally become for me that wall behind which I can always hide, whose arms will cover me from the injustice of the world. I always dreamed of having Tosan because, next to him, I can become a little girl, a girl who is protected, not who is protected. Perhaps the only one who has seen this side of me up to this point is Sasuke, but he is not that San, and this is completely different. I don't know how much time we spent in the kitchen hugging each other. It seems like a couple of times someone popped in and asked something. The voices vaguely sounded like Anai-san and Nasan, but I didn't pay attention to it. Tosan didn't let me out of his arms all this time. He just gently stroked my head and whispered some soothing nonsense. However, at that moment I didn't care. I just listened to his quiet voice, that's all. Gradually I calmed down, and fatigue began to fall on me. I don't remember the moment when I fell asleep, but in the morning I woke up in my bed from an annoying ray of sun that made its way through the tightly curtained windows. At first I didn't even understand where I was and couldn't remember how I got here. Gradually, memories of last night began to pop up in my head. I lost it though. I hardly get up and go to the window, my head, and not only it, responds to sudden movements with throbbing pain. I open the curtains and find that the sun is already high. I listen to the silence in the house. Apparently, no one is there anymore. Everything as usual. I go to the bathroom to wash my face and look in the mirror. The only thing that reminded me of my past hysteria was the excessive pallor of my face, circles under my eyes, throbbing pain and heaviness in my head. Not much, but enough to complicate life. Kurama, help, will you? I ask my red-haired friend, but I don't get an answer. Kurama? I call him again, but in response there is silence again. Well, Madara is with you. I mutter and begin to wash myself, secretly hoping that after mentioning my enemy he will answer, but in vain. Cool water eases my suffering, but I'm in no hurry to rejoice, nor am I in a hurry to begin treatment myself. I'll have to concentrate too much, which means my head will start to hurt again, so I'd better go downstairs and find some medicine, and later I'll go down to the subconscious and find out from Kurama what's the matter. A simple hysteria could not have affected me like that. And this was not a simple hysteria. Kurama's quiet voice echoed in his head with a strong flash of pain. Sorry, it will get easier now. Guilty notes emerged in the growling voice, and a warm, almost burning wave of his chakra flowed through my body. And I could only be glad that I didn't have time to leave the room and all this happened before I got to the stairs, otherwise it would have been a long flight for me. Gradually, the pain began to decrease under the influence of the healing chakra, and I felt better, but it did not go away completely, but simply lay low. I had a feeling that she might soon return, and perhaps not in double size. What was that, Kurama? Feeling that now the sounds do not bring such suffering, I asked carefully, simultaneously settling comfortably in the lotus position on the bed and descending into the subconscious. The merger is completely completed. My red-haired friend grunts in response. However, this is not why you have unpleasant feelings. And he falls silent. And because of what? Tired of waiting for continuation, I asked. You see, my dear, a deceptively soft beginning, and then he breaks into an enraged roar. You're a fool, Uzumaki. Do you have a sense of self-preservation? Or did you imagine yourself immortal? Calm down, Kurama. I tried to cut into the furious cries of my personal demon. Calm down? The fox soared. Don't you understand at all what happened? No, I don't understand. I agreed accommodatingly. You almost burned out, idiot. Kurama told me, deflating like a punctured balloon. If you haven't forgotten, you're a fool in the body of a teenager. Red muttered gloomily. And what? I did not understand. Hormonal changes, rapid body growth, an unstable nervous system, unable to withstand strong and prolonged stimuli. Kurama began to list in a boring tone, closing his eyes. I'll repeat myself, but, so what? I asked, tilting my head to my shoulder. Kurama froze and, it seemed, stopped breathing. I shouldn't have raised my voice. And soon I could even appreciate how, when Red opened his eyes and stared straight at me. Do you really not understand? He asked me affectionately. Yes? For some reason, under Kurama's enraged gaze, I felt uncomfortable, and I came up with more of a question than a statement. Naruto, you are very lucky that Tsunadeheim was visiting you at that moment. Kurama unexpectedly calmed down sharply and, putting his head on his paws, looked at me with wild fatigue. Your breakdown almost burned out your chakra channels, or rather, a nervous grin, almost hurt them for you. What do you mean? I frowned. Things started to get too serious. Naruto, no matter how much you want to admit, this body is in many ways inferior to what you had in that world and at that age. It is weaker and more tender. And it's not even that you were a guy there at first, just because of the peculiarities of your life. I could only be glad that he bypassed such a sensitive issue and spared my feelings. It was stronger and more prepared for stress. Kurama began to explain in a calm, but with notes of tension voice. Now you're in a completely unprepared body, and the tension hasn't let you go since the first day. Seeing that, I've already opened my mouth to object, because I've already let off steam a couple of times, or, to put it bluntly, I've already had a few hysterical. He growled irritably at me. Don't interrupt and listen. Making sure that I was silent, he continued, from day one, your body and mind are working hard. The first one doesn't really rest either during the day when you are training, or at night when I work with your chakra channels. The second one is also overloaded, because it not only processed the memories that you inherited, putting them on shelves, but you yourself constantly overloaded it. All this led to the fact that, without noticing it yourself, you turned into a tense string. Tron and explodes. What did this threaten me with? I asked gloomily. If it weren't for Tsunadeheim, your chakra channels would have been distorted. My friend chuckled and, seeing my incredulous look, explained, we are stretching them out for you too quickly, because your chakras are not just many times, but hundreds of times greater than this body had before. You constantly had micro cracks and similar problems. Usually I manage to heal them before they become a problem, but your breakdown. It caused the chakra to rush around the entire central nervous system chaotically, without any special system increasing and decreasing the speed and force of chakra pressure in different parts of the body. Wait, but I don't remember the pain and I calmed down and fell asleep in Tusan's arms? I was confused. I won't argue, Kurama chuckled. You really fell asleep and calmed down in his arms, only now, you were put to sleep by Tsunadeheim after a few minutes of your hysteria. But, I tried to object. The yondaime then sat with you until your condition stabilized, and all this time, on the advice of Tsunadeheim, who was treating you, he spoke to you, Kurama explained. So rejoice, you escaped with a slight fright and a ban on techniques during the entire time before the exam. You would have been removed from him too, but Akeo didn't allow it, and Minato suddenly supported him. That's how it is, I thought. Yes. Lucky you, Kurama agreed wearily. Rejoice, now no one will pester you, and you can spend the time before the exam as you wish. At least some consolation. I smiled wryly. You can finally devote your precious time to transferring chakra to Shikaku. Kurama grinned. And don't look at me like that. He was indignant when he saw my skeptical face. I do not require you to speed up or release chakra, you will simply transfer almost all of your chakra accumulated during the day to him. In the subconscious, this is easy to do and does not pose a threat to your condition. You have to look for the positive in everything, right, Kurama? I smiled, feeling my mood lifting after the slightly rude but sincere concern for me from my red-haired friend. Naturally. Kurama bared his teeth in response. Now get lost, they will soon enter your room. Was the last thing I heard before I was kicked out of my own subconscious. Naruto, are you awake? At first a delicate knock was heard, and then a question. Judging by the voice, it's Nei-san. A second's delay, and they tell me, I enter. Well, why are you asking if you still enter without waiting for an invitation? I was sincerely indignant. What if I'm not dressed? After my NBU days, it's hard to scare me, and Ai-san seriously tells me. Get up and let's go have breakfast, Tusan and Kachan asked me to follow you. Therefore, I will be around for the rest of the time until Chunin Shuriken, and without waiting for an answer from me, who had fallen into a slight stupor, he disappeared from the room. And what was that, Kurama? I asked confused. They just called you scary, Kurama said sarcastically. Considering the meaning of the phrase, you can add the word very. Anaya-san,